I never imagined that a simple decision, to wear the outfit I had spent hours perfecting, could completely upend everything I thought I knew about myself. But there I was, standing in front of the mirror, the full ensemble carefully arranged, dress, heels, makeup, hair, every detail meticulous, every choice deliberate. I was ready to step into a world that had always felt familiar yet completely unknown. It started with the flight. A short trip, a routine journey, but I had insisted on going fully dressed, fully me. I could almost hear my own heartbeat in my ears as I slid my feet into the heels, the delicate straps hugging my ankles, my legs suddenly feeling longer, more elegant, more visible. The reflection staring back at me in the airport bathroom was startling. The outfit clung perfectly to my curves, the dress swaying lightly with every breath I took. My hair fell in soft waves, framing a face I had sculpted with makeup but now seemed almost alive, vibrant, and completely mine. I look like her, I whispered to my reflection, voice trembling. And she's me. I had practiced in private, rehearsed gestures and posture, honed my voice until it felt fluid and natural. But nothing prepared me for the intensity of stepping out into public fully dressed as this version of myself. The walk to the gate felt surreal. Every footstep on the polished airport floor echoed in my mind. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet exhilarated. Passers-by glanced my way, some curious, some admiring, some merely confused, but I realized, in that moment, that I owned this version of myself. The first challenge was boarding. The line moved slowly, and each second I stood there, dressed fully as me, was a test of courage. My hands were steady, my posture upright, but my chest tightened with every gaze that lingered, every subtle whisper I imagined in the air. "You can do this," I muttered under my breath, fingers lightly adjusting the hem of my dress. "You are her. You are you." And then it happened, a small child pointed, whispering to their parent. A woman smiled at me, a subtle nod of recognition or perhaps admiration. A man's eyes lingered, curiosity and surprise mingling. Each reaction was electric, and I felt a wave of thrill mixed with fear. The dress wasn't just clothing, it was a spotlight, a lens through which the world now viewed me. When I finally settled into my seat, the plane still bustling with activity, I took a deep breath. The hum of the engines, the soft chatter of passengers, even the subtle swaying of the aircraft, all of it felt amplified. Every sensation in my body, the gentle brush of fabric against my thighs, the subtle pressure of heels on my feet, the tilt of my shoulders, was magnified. "I am here," I whispered softly. "And I am fully me." The flight attendants didn't bat an eye. The world didn't collapse. And yet, in the quiet moments as the plane lifted off, I felt the profound reality of my decision. I was no longer hiding. I was no longer experimenting in secret. I was fully visible, fully exposed, fully myself. The thrill was intoxicating, but so was the fear. Every bump, every turn, every glance felt magnified. I imagined what people thought, imagined judgment, and yet felt a strange, almost magnetic confidence growing within me. By the time we reached cruising altitude, I realized something extraordinary. The outfit, the posture, the makeup, the hair, they weren't just external. They had unlocked something inside me. Courage, curiosity, empowerment, qualities I had never known could coexist in such intensity. And as I gazed out the tiny oval window at the clouds beneath me, I understood, this first flight, dressed fully as me, wasn't just a physical journey. It was the beginning of a transformation, a declaration, and a confrontation with every part of myself I had hidden, denied, or feared. "I am visible," I whispered, voice steady now, melodic and sure. "And I am ready." The moment I stepped off the plane, the world felt heavier and brighter at the same time. Every pair of eyes, every stray glance, every whisper, or imagined whisper, seemed magnified. The heels clicked against the airport tiles, a rhythmic announcement of my presence. My dress swayed delicately with every step, the lace brushing softly against my thighs, reminding me constantly of how visible I had become. Delilah met me at baggage claim, her grin wide and approving. "See? Nobody cares as much as you think they do, she said, linking her arm with mine. But I could feel the tension still coiled in my chest. My hands trembled slightly, not from the height of the heels, but from awareness. Every movement, every gesture, every breath carried meaning now. We stepped into a cab, and I realized that even small interactions were tests. The driver glanced at me, his eyebrows rising slightly, then quickly looked back at the road. I forced a smile, letting it linger just long enough to communicate confidence without arrogance. The effect was immediate. He relaxed, the previous tension dissipating, and I felt a flicker of pride. I could do this. But public spaces were not without their challenges. A woman at a coffee shop stared openly as I ordered, tilting her head with curiosity. I noticed the slight smirk of a man at the counter, an eyebrow raised in quiet amusement. I felt a rush of panic, my heart hammering, but I remembered my private rehearsals, the way I had practiced gestures, posture, and poise. Slowly, deliberately, I adjusted my stance, placing a hand gently on my hip, letting the skirt sway naturally, and spoke in a soft, confident voice. "I am me," I whispered under my breath. "And nothing else matters." The woman's gaze softened, her smirk turning into a subtle nod of acknowledgement. It was a small victory, but it sparked something profound inside me. I realized that the dress, the heels, the makeup, they weren't just external, they were extensions of my confidence, my identity, my presence. At the hotel, the challenge escalated. Navigating the elevator in full view of strangers, opening doors, managing luggage, all mundane tasks became exercises in poise and self-expression. I caught glimpses of my reflection in mirrors along the corridor and felt a mixture of delight and embarrassment. My body moved differently now, lighter, more fluid. Each step reinforced a growing truth: I was no longer hiding. That night, standing in the hotel room, I took a long look at myself in the full-length mirror. The transformation was complete, not just in appearance, but in presence. My shoulders were straight, my chin lifted, my expression confident yet soft. My voice, when I spoke aloud, was melodic, firm, unmistakably feminine. And the dress, oh, the dress, felt like a second skin, an armor woven from lace and silk, reflecting the courage that had grown inside me. The next day brought the airport return journey, a test of endurance and emotional resilience. Every glance, every whispered comment, every stare became an opportunity to assert myself. People in the terminal whispered, some admiring, some questioning, but I held my head high, moving through the crowd with deliberate elegance. The thrill of visibility, of being truly seen, surged through me, replacing fear with exhilaration. Even small interactions sparked internal revelations. A child pointed and whispered, a woman offered a discreet compliment, a man's eyes lingered. Each reaction, each observation, was a reminder of my presence and my power. I felt exposed, yes, but also alive in a way I had never experienced before. Back at home, the reflection in my bedroom mirror revealed more than just the outfit. It reflected the growing realization that identity was not merely external, not merely a costume, but a complex, evolving truth. Each blush, each smile, each sway of the hips spoke of courage, self-expression, and the discovery of a side of myself that had been dormant, waiting, hidden. The dress had done more than reveal me to others, it had revealed me to me. Every interaction, every reaction, every whisper had forced me to confront who I truly was. And through that confrontation, I began to embrace the thrill of visibility, the power of self-expression, and the profound liberation of choosing to be fully, unapologetically me. By the end of the week, the flight had become more than a journey. It was a mirror, a test, a revelation. I had navigated public scrutiny, social tension, and my own fears, and I had emerged exhilarated, empowered, and ready for the next stage of discovery. Returning home from the flight, I realized that the real journey had only begun. The airplane had been a stage, the public the audience, but now, alone, I could explore the depths of this transformation without judgment, without whispers, without curious eyes. I started with my reflection. Standing before the full-length mirror, I let myself take in every detail, the dress hugging my curves, the lace brushing my thighs, my hair falling in perfect waves, and the subtle shine of makeup that accentuated my features. I was no longer performing for anyone else. This was for me, and it felt intoxicating. I twirled slowly, watching the fabric sway. Each movement felt deliberate, controlled, yet fluid, and I noticed subtleties I had never recognized before: the tilt of my head, the delicate arch of my hands, the way my shoulders shifted naturally. I practiced walking, each step precise, hips swaying with confidence, heels clicking against the hardwood floor in rhythm. I can feel it. I am becoming her, I whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of awe and exhilaration. Next came my voice. Alone in the quiet of my apartment, I experimented with pitch, tone, and inflection. I spoke aloud, rehearsing conversations, practicing laughter, and whispering secrets to myself in this new, melodic voice. The experience was transformative, not merely auditory, but emotional. My voice carried confidence, softness, and a delicate playfulness that reflected the internal changes the outfit had sparked. Then I explored gestures and expressions. Sitting at my vanity, I practiced subtle smiles, tilts of the head, and the way my eyes could convey curiosity, mischief, or warmth. Each gesture was a revelation, a rediscovery of femininity and presence I had never allowed myself to express. But experimentation wasn't just about appearance or behavior. It was about sensation. I ran my fingers along the fabric of the dress, noticing how it responded to movement. I felt the soft lace along my wrists, the delicate sway at my waist, the way heels altered the posture of my legs and spine. Every sensation heightened awareness of my body, every movement deepened the sense of being fully alive in this identity. I also began keeping a journal, documenting every feeling, every reaction, every revelation. Words poured onto the page, confessions, desires, secrets, and reflections that had remained buried. I wrote about the thrill of attention, the subtle power of vulnerability, and the joy of discovering facets of myself I had long ignored. Writing became a ritual, a bridge between internal exploration and self-expression. One evening, emboldened, I decided to experiment with slight public exposure. A short walk to the nearby park, fully dressed, allowed me to test how I navigated attention, curiosity, and judgment. I noticed glances, whispers, and smiles, and each reaction sparked a mix of fear, exhilaration, and pride. I practiced graceful movement, subtle eye contact, and soft smiles. The thrill of being observed without hiding reinforced the confidence that had begun to take root in private. Over time, these sessions of experimentation and reflection created a profound shift. The outfit, the gestures, the voice, the posture, they were no longer tools of experimentation, they were extensions of my identity. I felt comfortable inhabiting this version of myself, confident in movement, expression, and presence. I also discovered joy in small performances, pouring tea at the kitchen table, arranging flowers on the windowsill, even dancing alone in the living room. Every action was deliberate, every motion enhanced by the awareness of how the outfit and my body interacted. These moments, private yet profoundly intimate, cemented the realization that femininity, elegance, and self-expression were not performances to impress others, they were authentic reflections of my inner self. One night, standing before the mirror, I whispered softly to my reflection. You are her. You are me. You are powerful. You are visible. You are alive. The affirmation wasn't just words, it was a recognition of the journey I had embarked on, the self I had discovered, and the confidence I had nurtured. Each practice, each private exploration, each subtle experiment had brought me closer to embracing this identity fully. By the end of these weeks of private exploration, I was no longer tentative, shy, or fearful. I had honed every gesture, every glance, every step. I had learned to inhabit my body, my outfit, and my presence with elegance and confidence. The dress, the heels, the makeup, they were no longer instruments of curiosity. They were symbols of empowerment, reflection, and discovery. And with each reflection, each whisper, each movement, I realized one undeniable truth. I was ready, not just to explore privately, but to embrace fully, openly, and confidently the identity that had been waiting within me all along. The day I decided to take the full leap, to go out dressed fully as me, felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. My reflection in the mirror stared back with a mixture of confidence, excitement, and nerves. Every detail of my outfit, the dress, the heels, the perfectly applied makeup, was in place, and I knew this moment would test everything I had practiced in private. Stepping into the bustling streets, I immediately felt the weight of eyes on me. Some glanced with curiosity, some with admiration, others with silent judgment. But instead of panic, I felt a surge of exhilaration. I had rehearsed this in private for weeks, now it was real, and I was ready. Each step I took was deliberate. My heels clicked against the pavement, announcing my presence. My hips swayed naturally, my posture elegant, my hands moving fluidly by my sides. The dress moved with me, lace and fabric catching the light in a way that felt almost magical. At a nearby cafe, I paused, observing the reactions. A group of students whispered among themselves, pointing subtly, yet I felt no shame. I tilted my head, offered a soft smile, and greeted them warmly. The tension melted into curiosity, and then into admiration. I realized that confidence, the kind that comes from embracing oneself fully, is magnetic. Later, at a boutique, I tested my interactions further. I asked for assistance selecting accessories, trying on hats and scarves, and even offering compliments to the shop attendants. Every response reinforced my awareness. This was not a costume, not a role, but an authentic expression of my identity. People responded to me, not just the outfit. But the true test came unexpectedly. A former friend, someone who had often teased me for shyness and awkwardness, spotted me in the street. Their initial look of surprise quickly shifted to curiosity, then disbelief. My heart raced, but I remembered my weeks of preparation, the private practice, the journal affirmations. I squared my shoulders, held my head high, and approached them with poise. "It's you," they said, voice catching. I smiled softly, feeling the tension in my chest ease. "Yes," I replied, voice melodic, confident. "It's me, fully me." The silence that followed was electric. And then, unexpectedly, they laughed softly, a warm, genuine sound. I love it," they admitted. "You look amazing." A wave of relief and pride washed over me. The fear of judgment, the anxiety of exposure, it all melted into exhilaration. I realized in that moment that embracing my identity publicly wasn't just about how others saw me, it was about acknowledging, affirming, and celebrating who I truly was. The final empowerment came that evening, at a small gathering Delilah had arranged. Friends, strangers, and even family members were present. I walked in confidently, the dress flowing perfectly, heels tapping lightly against the floor. Heads turned, whispers fluttered, but I held my composure, smiling, engaging, and expressing myself fully. One by one, people approached, complimenting, asking questions, sharing admiration. The energy was electric, the air charged with curiosity and acceptance. I realized then that vulnerability, when embraced courageously, transforms into power. My presence commanded attention not through force, but through authenticity. By the end of the evening, I stood before the mirror in the corner, observing myself amid laughter and conversation. The reflection was no longer tentative, fearful, or uncertain. It was radiant, confident, and fully alive. Every detail, the dress, the posture, the gestures, spoke of empowerment, self-expression, and the culmination of a journey I had embarked on alone, in private, and now embraced publicly. "I am visible," I whispered softly, voice steady and melodic. "I am powerful. I am fully me." The journey had started with a single outfit, a private reflection, and tentative experiments. But it had grown into something far greater, a revelation of identity, a celebration of courage, and an empowerment that radiated through every movement, every glance, every smile. The world had watched, judged, and reacted. And through it all, I had learned the greatest lesson of all: authenticity is magnetic, confidence is transformative, and embracing oneself fully is the ultimate form of courage. That night, as I rested, I knew something profound had shifted. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't performing. I was fully, unapologetically, irrevocably myself.